Our story is one of neighbors.
I don't pretend that it's going to be easy.
Don't let your anger turn into hatred. We know that hatred is like a fire. When it's allowed to grow, it will consume everything.
Welcome to Orange Wave, the series discussing progressive news, culture, and all things related to the NDP. I am your host, Will Adams, and today I'm here to talk about something that's been on my mind for a while. And not in a good way. Recently, Durham MP Jamil Jivani has been pushing this wild narrative that Christians are being persecuted in Canada. Yeah, you heard me, right? Persecuted in Canada. The same Canada where Christmas basically shuts the entire country down and Christian traditions are baked into our societal norms. But Jivani isn't just spewing vague complaints. He's been doubling down, saying things about Christian hospitals refusing to provide euthanasia services, parental rights, and you guessed it, good old-fashioned culture wars. So let's unpack the ridiculousness of his claims piece by piece. Let's start here with the argument that Christian hospitals should not be required to provide euthanasia services.
Do you believe Catholic hospitals should be forced against their will to provide euthanasia to their patients? Do you believe that doctors and nurses should be coerced under the threat of losing their jobs to provide euthanasia or make referrals for euthanasia?
Look, if you are running a hospital, your job is to prioritize patients and their medical needs, period. Medicine is about science, compassion, and respect for a patient's autonomy. If your religion prevents you from offering legally available medical services, then guess what? Maybe running a hospital just isn't the job for you. You can't just let your personal beliefs dictate patient care. That's not persecution. It's literally the bare minimum when you work in healthcare.
Jamil Jivani here, Member of Parliament for Durham. I'm sounding the alarm. We need to do more to protect Christians in Canada. Now, when you see a Christmas tree like this in Parliament, you might think that's a sign of respect for Christians. But what good is a Christmas tree here in Parliament when you have a federal government that will not lift a finger to protect Christians from governments and corporations abusing their power? What good is a Christmas tree here in Parliament when you have a federal government that will not fight anti-Christian bigotry in Canadian institutions?
Oh man, this is
We've got to take action now. We need to defend parental rights of mothers and fathers.
Oh, won't somebody please think of the children?
Yes, parental rights. The latest darling buzzword of the right-wing moral panic brigade. It's the shiny, innocent-sounding phrase that conservatives love to throw around. But let's be clear, when they talk about parental rights, it's not about empowering families or protecting kids. It's about control. Controlling what kids can read, learn, and even be. And of course, it's always at the expense of the most vulnerable children. They frame affirming a child's gender identity as some kind of ideological indoctrination, or even child abuse. Let's take a moment to unpack just how cruel and twisted that framing is. Imagine being a trans kid, already facing confusion, fear, and, most likely bullying. And then, you hear some politician claim that the adults who accept and affirm you are actually hurting you. That's not protecting kids. That's isolating them. That's othering them. It's telling them that their identity isn't valid, that their existence is a problem that needs to be fixed because they're broken. And it's no coincidence that the same people screaming about parental rights are the ones who push for banning books, restricting classroom discussions about LGBTQ issues, and forcing kids to out themselves to unsupportive families. What part of that is about protecting children? Let me say it plainly, as clearly as I possibly can. Respecting your child's identity is not child abuse. Supporting them, affirming them, and helping them navigate who they are is parenting. On the other hand, forcing them into rigid, harmful roles that deny their existence, that's what is actually abuse. Full stop. Whenever Jivani talks about parental rights, he's really talking about giving parents the right to deny their children the love and support they deserve. He's talking about allowing schools to ignore the identities of kids and about preventing those kids from accessing life-saving resources. This rhetoric is deadly. Studies consistently show that trans kids with supportive environments have significantly lower rates of depression and suicide. So when politicians like Jivani push this narrative, they're not protecting kids, they're putting them at risk. And the hypocrisy, oh, it's off the charts. These are the same people who scream every single day about state or government overreach when it comes to policies like healthcare or housing. But they're perfectly fine with the government actually stepping in to police how parents raise their children. Because for them, they don't care about small government or big government so long as said government enforces their worldview. And I have just had it with the gaslighting. They're weaponizing kids without asking them how they feel. They're turning them into pawns in a culture war they never asked to be a part of. And it's disgusting. If you actually care about children, then care about all of them. Kids of all walks of life. Because guess what? They deserve love, dignity, and respect just like anyone else. People like Jamil Jivani are not protecting families. He's tearing them apart. He's not standing up for values, he's standing on the necks of the most vulnerable, and history will not remember people like him kindly.
To defend conscience rights of unionized and non-unionized workers, including healthcare professionals. We have to stop the crime spree targeting churches, including arsons and vandalism.
Ah yes, the burning of churches. This topic has been a hotbed for misinformation and outrage, and the right-wing establishment media has been spinning their usual web of lies. Some of these church burnings caused by natural events like lightning strikes. That's right, lightning. Not exactly the arson conspiracy they want you to believe, but let's not pretend for haven't been intentional burnings either. That is happening, and it's an issue we need to talk about. Here's the thing, burning down churches is not okay. Violence and destruction, barring a few notable exceptions, does not move us forward. But we have to ask, why is this happening? What's driving this anger? And if you look at Canada's horrific legacy of residential schools, many of which were run by Christian organizations, the answer becomes pretty clear. For decades, Indigenous children were stolen from their families, stripped of their language and culture, and subjected to abuse, neglect, and death. And let's not forget, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission released its calls to action in the 2010s. How many of those have been fully implemented by the government? A handful, and that's being generous. People are fed up, they're angry, they're hurt, and they see these churches, rightly or wrongly, as symbols of the institutions that caused harm. I'm absolutely not condoning these acts of arson. I just think it's crucial to understand where this rage is coming from. It's not about hating Christianity, it's about demanding accountability and action. When you've been ignored, silenced, and dismissed for generations, sometimes that anger boils over. The focus should not just be on the burnings. It should be on why so many Canadians feel so unheard that they resort to this kind of expression. That's on the government and the policies that they've implemented or refused to get rid of. To everyone pearl-clutching over these fires while ignoring the centuries of harm inflicted by these same institutions, please spare me. Direct your energy toward demanding actual reconciliation, not just performative outrage. If we want to actually prevent these incidents, the solution is not just condemning these acts, it's addressing the root cause. The anger will only subside when we take real steps toward justice and reconciliation. Until then, don't expect people to stay quiet about the pain they've carried for generations.
And we need to defend the legal status of Christian charities and the freedom of expression of Christian churches.
And then there's the argument about the legal status of Christian charities. Jamil Jivani seems to think that if we don't let Christian organizations bend the rules to fit their dogma, we are somehow persecuting them. Let's be clear, Jivani isn't asking for recognition, he's asking for special treatment. Let me remind you of a particularly horrific example. The time the Salvation Army let a transgender woman freeze to death rather than admit her to a woman's shelter. They decided their interpretation of faith was more important than saving a human life. That's not charity. That's cruelty masquerading as piety. If you're running a charitable organization, you don't get to pick and choose who deserves your help based on your personal beliefs. That's just basic accountability. If your charity wants to take public funds, you better be ready to abide by public standards, like equality, inclusivity, and respect for basic human dignity. This isn't about protecting religion, it's about using religion as a shield to discriminate. And no, Jamil, that is not a right you are entitled to in this country. Canadians deserve better than a system where charity means leaving some of our most vulnerable out in the cold to die. If you're worried about Christian charities losing their legal status, maybe start by ensuring they don't contribute to systemic harm. Because, at least from where I'm sitting, you're not actually asking for a right, you're asking for special treatment.
The time for action is now. Make your voice heard, take a stand. We're launching a petition today at protectchristianscanada.com. I'm asking you to go on that website, and if you agree with me that we've got to do more to protect Christians in our country, please sign and share that petition. Take a stand, make your voice heard. We're going to be presenting that petition at an event here in Ottawa in February of next year. And between now and then, we need as many people as possible to show support for the Christian communities in our country. This is not about forcing other people to live according to Christian values, no. This is about whether Christians in Canada have the freedom to live according to their own traditions and to practice their own faith without corporations and governments engaging in overreach. The time is now, ladies and gentlemen. That is why I'm sounding the alarm. Visit protectchristianscanada.com. Thank you. God bless.
Now, let's just take a moment to talk generally about the persecution narrative. Some Christians in Canada claim they are being oppressed because, what? They're occasionally called out for trying to impose their beliefs on others? Please. The leaders of Canada's two largest political parties, Justin Trudeau and Pierre Poilievre, are both Christians, Catholic and evangelical respectively. Yves-François Blanchet of the Bloc Québécois, Catholic. There's only one major federal party leader who is not Christian, and that's Jagmeet Singh, who's Sikh. And yet, these folks are out here crying persecution while Sikhs, Muslims, Jews, Buddhists, and people of no faith have had to fight tooth and nail just to have their basic rights and practices recognized. Meanwhile, there's an actual third party, the Christian Heritage Party, whose whole mission is to get elected and turn this country into a Christian nationalist theocracy. Christians in this country have it easier than anyone else. Your holidays, Christmas, Easter, Good Friday, are all national holidays, statutory days off. When was the last time Yom Kippur or Eid got that treatment? Spoiler alert, never. If you think your life has ever even been remotely harder in Canada because you're Christian, then I have some bad news for you. You're playing victim, and it's embarrassing. Christians are not being persecuted in Canada. They hold the cards in every meaningful way. This persecution narrative is as annoying as it is dangerous. It's a tool used to justify discriminatory practices and maintain institutional privilege. So to Jamil Jivani and anyone else pushing this nonsense, grow the fuck up. You're not victims, you're the ones in power, and it's time you started acting like it. If your entire platform is built on fear, division, and a persecution complex, then maybe it's time to rethink your priorities because Canadians deserve better than this. And on that note, thank you for listening to today's episode of Orange Wave. As always, I am your host, Will Adams. And remember, don't settle for less. And don't let fake progressives tell you what to think. Like, comment, subscribe, and keep demanding better.